You don't know that a man is in Brooklyn right now for 3 years without charge or trial. And when Donald Trump says these people have been held for too long, you say, no, Trump is wrong. Keep them locked up. That's fucking fascist.
Look at his face, bro. Oh my goodness.
There is a man in Brooklyn right now. I'm going to say it again. No charges whatsoever brought. He's been in jail for 3 years. Tell me this now. Why is Enrique Tarrio in prison?
Yeah, so they uncovered with him his plot to overthrow the government.
What plot? Who's they? Give me some
prosecutors.
Give me some data. Stop. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren both said violence is wrong. No one should be doing this. It's horrible. But people can only push so far. As if to imply.
I don't think Bernie said that at all.
The healthcare CEO actually took an action that warranted the anger.
I think what Warren said was not great, but I don't think Bernie said that at all. We watched that interview just 2 days ago.
Of people to be happy that he died. The right doesn't have that. So
they do.
So the Republican Party does not have that.
Like why for months?
Really? You can't find people on social media calling for Liz Cheney to be hung for treason? Really? You can't find examples of violent extremist right-wing rhetoric? Why do you think I don't spend any more time on Twitter these days? Because it's gotten so bad. You couldn't find like, bro, Donald Trump himself was calling for Milley to be executed. He was calling for Liz Cheney to face a war tribunal.
This was Paul Pelosi mocked for having his head bashed.
Being mocked is different from advocating for killing.
Yeah, and respectfully too, January 6th was a big
yes,
deal
quite literally.
You think it's not encouraging political violence to laugh when it happens to your opponents?
No.
What about wanting to?
I have no problem. I have no problem with the left laughing when someone on the right is injured. I have no problem when the right laughs on someone on the left.
I know that's not true.
I think it's both.
Wait, hold on. Now, I may have some amnesia here. I'm fairly sure that Tim Pool blacklisted Destiny because Destiny was making jokes about the guy who got killed at the failed Trump assassination. Am I just making that up? I'm almost positive. I feel like I could bet I'm pretty sure that Tim Pool said he would never allow Destiny on a show ever again because Destiny was making jokes about the guy who died.
If we pulled up okay.
The left and the right, nobody should be mocking anybody.
Obviously, Trump is sending a message.
Nobody should be mocking anyone for being hurt, is what he just said. Okay, but if I look for what was Tim Pool saying about Paul Pelosi? I don't know what happened to Paul Pelosi, but there's no published hard evidence of anything, so why would I take their official story as fact? You either believe a far-right Q cultist sought to murder Nancy Pelosi and mercilessly beat her husband Paul, or you believe Paul let in a gay leftist prostitute for sex, but a fight broke out over drugs and he beat Paul with his hammer after beating him with his hammer. He's like, this is him making a joke. This is him joking about Paul Pelosi. And he's saying nobody should be making jokes. Okay, buddy.
On someone on the left?
I know that's not true.
I think it's both crass.
If we pulled up okay.
The left and the right, nobody should be mocking anybody.
Obviously, Trump is sending a message that such violence is not as bad as the left wants you to believe. If he's going, ooh, whatever he said about Paul, and the lies that were spread about it was a gay affair or something. That's obviously trying to.
It's very, very different from saying that the CEO of a healthcare company did something to warrant the anger towards him, like the call for his murder. That's very different.
First of all,
I don't know how many degrees of separation there are, but if you're straight up joking about the fact that somebody was like an 82-year-old man was violently assaulted with a hammer to the extent that they had to go to the emergency room and were placed in critical care, and you're cracking jokes about that, I don't know how far removed that is from saying like, well, I can understand why that CEO got killed. Like, how much separation is there? They're right next to each other, right? Like I don't understand. Like, there's not like a huge meaningful difference between those two.
I don't necessarily agree with.
You could even make an argument that joking about it is worse. Like, I feel like you could make that argument.
But also for me, I'm just going to be principled across the board because I'm also against that.
Did Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren say people can only push so far?
I'm sure they said something to that effect. If you're bringing it up,
what did the healthcare CEO do to warrant anger?
Why are you asking Luke Beasley to defend this? What is the purpose of this exercise? Luke didn't say that. He distanced himself from that language explicitly.
What did they do that pushed people so far?
He's such a little weasel. Simple's such a little slimy little weasel.
They would be advocating for their murder.
Oh, I'm not going to make an argument that I don't believe in.
I'm not saying you should argue for it. I'm saying
you can tell me.
Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren said murder is wrong. I'm paraphrasing, but you can only push people so far. that statement means the healthcare CEO did something that warrants people calling for their death.
I'd love to see the clip if you want me to break it down. Yeah.
Well, what they're alluding to is that the failure of the healthcare industries are responsible for their deaths, and therefore they are murderers.
And what I'm trying to explain to members of my own side, because I'm principled and
You can only, Elizabeth Warren said you can only push people so far. I mean, that's right there.
Right, and so then I would say bad Elizabeth Warren.
But she's mainstream, like liberal. She's a prominent Is there?
Yeah, I'm not hearing that she's not advocating for Biden to pardon Luigi.
No, but I'm saying, is there?
You know who is going to pardon violent
people? Did Chuck
people?
Schumer say anything like that?
Did Trump say he's going to pardon?
Who's going to pardon violent people?
January 6th, the assault. He specifically got asked about those who attacked police officers. He said yes.
Yeah.
So
how long?
I mean, do you want to run through the Biden pardons and go through ones that
let me ask you a
don't
question.
sound
but do you see the distinguish?
Did Biden pardon violent offenders? I don't think he did, right? I'm pretty sure all of Biden's pardons or commutations were for non-violent offenses. Now, I don't like all of his pardons, to be clear, but I'm unaware of him pardoning anyone for violent actions.
Which I agree, there are going to be people on our respective sides we disagree with. Yours happens to be the leader of, well, I don't know how you identify necessarily, but yours would be the guy on your leader of your entire movement.
If someone attacked a cop, how long should they go to jail for?
I don't know.
Oh boy. If somebody attacked a cop who was protecting the Capitol and the person attacking the cop was intending on preventing the certification of an election, 20 years.
A while?
What's a while?
20 years. I'm going to say 20 years. 20 years. If you attack a cop trying to stop the certification of a free and fair election because you don't like the results of that election, you should go to jail for 20 years.
Honest question.
4 years?
Totally depends on the details of the assault.
Okay, so they took a cop's shield from him and bashed him on the head with it.
I'm not going to give you a specific answer. I would have to look into the guidelines prosecutorily. I'd have to look at other
So
cases.
then you literally have no opinion on Trump's pardons then?
What?
I hate Tim Pool. I hate him so much. He's such a slimy little weasel.
I'm saying that Trump
is
shouldn't
pardoning
intervene.
people on January 6th who were violent and attacked cops.
Yep. And some of them...
They've been
are
in jail for
specific-
3 years.
Okay.
How long should they be in prison for?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the individual cases. Some of them wanted to overthrow the government. So that...
This is a completely reasonable answer. Like, it depends, right? It depends what the person's priors are. It depends on what the sentencing guidelines are. Like, this is a eminently reasonable response. Like, you don't have to give them a specific number. And if you're not fully aware of like what the sentencing guidelines are, then it's perfectly fine to say like, well, I just don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into it, right?
would add
That would mean you're
right?
neutral on Trump's pardon then.
No, because...
I hate him so much. How do you get there? How do you go from, well, I don't feel comfortable giving you a number because I'm just not familiar with like the sentencing guidelines to, well, now you can't possibly care about the pardons. What is this logic? What is this leap in logic?
Because I think that the prosecutors who brought these cases, then brought them in front of a jury and got convictions should be respected. Just like how I don't think that Biden should have pardoned his son. And even though these cases are far more serious, but I think those outcomes should be respected because I respect the justice.
More serious than
And so my point is this.
And then-
If you don't have a thought on how long they should be in prison, it's
Do you
fine
notice
to
that this
say...
is what you do a lot, though?
It's fine to say
like
if we don't know how the pardon...
your argument fails, you're just going to ask hyper-specific,
Yes.
slightly irrelevant questions to me.
How is it irrelevant?
Yes.
Because I don't think it's relevant for me to figure out because I didn't sit in these courtrooms.
It is completely irrelevant to ask Luke Beasley about his personal opinion on the sentencing of January 6 people.
And listen to the details of every case, exactly how long each one should
How
be.
could you advocate for someone to be in jail if you don't know?
Well, I can tell you. Because Trump is saying we should subvert.
How can you advocate that someone deserves to go to jail but not be completely sure off the top of your head how long they should go to jail for because you're not entirely like familiar with that? I mean, like if Tim's point is that these people have been in jail for too long, he could make that point by saying like, well, here's what the standard sentencing is, right? And these people have been in jail for longer than that, and therefore
process.
they should be pardoned.
Because he thinks what they...
But he's not even making that argument. He's not like because he can't make that argument, right? Like I really doubt that these people were their sentences were like well and above sentencing guidelines, right?
they did was patriotic and should then pardon.
That's exactly right. He's asking like 1,000 questions and not bothering to answer them himself because he's just looking for a gotcha. He's looking to try to get Luke into a trap. I feel like Luke is doing a pretty good job of navigating it so far. He's identifying what Tim is doing, certainly.
I don't. Has he specifically said it was patriotic to do that?
Yeah, he. I mean, he like salutes to that song they sang every single.
Well,
rally.
like, is there a quote where Trump said that January 6th, people who attacked cops was patriotic?
what he said was that they had no choice. That's what he said, which is just insane. He said that in an interview. Was it last Sunday? He gave an interview to MSNBC, or maybe the Sunday before, I can't remember. But when she asked him, do you plan on pardoning people that were violent against cops? He interrupted her and said, well, they gave him no choice. They had no choice. They thought they had no choice. I don't know if it's a leap to say that he was implying that they were patriotic by doing that, right? Because if they had no choice, then yeah.
I genuinely,
Because I want to be fully honest, I will say I'm almost 100% certain he said that at some point.
that the people who attacked the police and were violent were acting patriotic.
Not in that order, but that the
I'm paraphrasing. I'm saying
January
like in general.
6th, defendant. And then as we dive more specifically into that.
I think if you're on the left or the right and you attack a cop, depending on the severity of the attack, like if we're talking about you're at a riot and you punch a cop or shove them, 6 months to a year is probably good.
NPR just reported on the 12th.
6 months to a year. Donald Trump praises January 6 rioters, great patriots. Former President Donald Trump yet again lauded his supporters who were in prison following the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, calling them, quote, great patriots during an interview on Friday.
That President Biden commutes a sentence for 1,500 people. Some say he could do a lot more. 1,500 people.
No, but he already said that was wrong. That's fine.
No, not all those. I was saying Hunter Biden.
Luke, do you feel as though more Democrats were willing to justify the BLM riots than Republican elected officials were to condemn January 6th?
It's just not true. No, absolutely not. At this point, I believe it's a clear majority of Republican voters sympathize with the January 6 rioters. Republicans who identify as a part of the MAGA movement, this is from a poll from 2023. Though most Republicans don't condone the actions of those who forced their way into the Capitol, the strength of their disapproval has waned over time. Half of Republicans strongly disapproved just after the attack. Now just a third do. Meanwhile, outright approval in the party has risen. And Republicans who identify as part of the MAGA movement are nearly twice as likely as the non-MAGA wing to outright approve of the actions of the rioters. So among Republicans broadly, so maybe I was wrong, only 30% of Republicans in, this is actually January 2023, 30% of Republicans approve of January 6th. 38% only say they somewhat disapprove, and only 32% say they strongly disapprove. But MAGA Republicans, it's 43% of self-described MAGA Republicans support the actions of the people who broke into the Capitol on January 6th. Almost half the party. We're getting at right close to half the party. Now, what percentage of Democrats, I mean, I don't even know what to look for here. What percentage of Democrats supported 2020 rioting? I can't find a lot of data specifically when it comes to rioting. I can see data on who supported the BLM protests broadly, but not specifically rioting. I mean, listen, I like the median Democratic voter is pretty moderate. So it would shock me if we saw similar numbers. Like, so we just saw that 43% of MAGA Republicans, and well, we'll do 30% of Republicans broadly, supported January 6th. I would really doubt that you would see 30% of Democrats supporting the riots of 2020. I just can't find any data right now. If you guys find anything, let me know, but yeah.
Well, interestingly, a lot of I will answer the left wing in a second, but a lot of the Republican politicians just changed their position. So initially it was like unanimously that was bad. Now almost all of them apologize for what happened that day. And we all, as I was explaining one of the times here, we all missed the broader danger of trying to block the peaceful transfer of power that led up. January 6th wasn't the whole thing. That was the ending, and that was more individuals. But Trump's effort to prevent Biden from coming to office is what I really take issue with. But no, now a bunch of Republicans apologize for it, which is terrible. And then Democrats.
No, but the question was specifically for the Democrats.
And then I couldn't tell you.
Any Democrats who were condemning
my guess would be
BLM writ large.
that more Republicans have apologized for the violence on January 6th than Democrats. But let me get to the caveat. Then Democrats who apologized for violence during BLM, very limited. They would all say violence is bad, but the cause was.
It's the voice of the unheard, like MLK. Remember?
But then I'd get to, I think it's a fair criticism to say maybe some were too quiet about the violence. Like none of them were out there saying this is fine.
Well, they were taking a knee. They were taking a knee. Many of them, Nancy Pelosi and some Democrat leaders, and they were
would
putting
show
their
up to a
fists.
peaceful.
They were taking a knee in support of the protests, not the riots. And in the Congressional Black Caucus, that famous picture of all those like white Democrats taking a knee in 2020, the Congressional Black Caucus asked them to do that. That wasn't like Pelosi's idea. They were asked to do that, and they did it. And, you know, it was a little bit cringe in retrospect. A little bit cringe at the time, but they didn't. Literally, the Black Caucus asked them to do that, right?
Protest, and then as a part of that, people would be exploiting.
Maxine Waters with the whole, you have to go find them in restaurants and you have to get in their face.
Like that's not direct violence, but that's
encouraging.
Here's two phrases.
That
for you.
was probably too
Respect
far.
the diversity of tactics, and snitches
Keep bringing that up.
and snitches get stitches.
There, yeah, what? Okay.
No, but then Kamala Harris also was posting a bill.
Wait, what did he just? He referenced the phrase "snitches get stitches," as though this is like a broadly left-wing phrase.
For BLM rioters, and
It's just weird. Y'all are the ones supporting the politicians who say this, like Trump,
Who? Say what?
who justify violence.
When did Trump justify violence?
That's a good question.
I thought we just went through that.
We didn't. I asked you for examples, and you said, I don't know.
This
Don't just
is really
squint at
weird.
me. Tell me what you think.
No,
It's like whenever you have an answer, you just get confused and say, what are you talking about?
I'm genuinely confused.
Okay,
that
let's
you're
try
not
this
listening
again.
to me because
Well, I am, but
obviously, if
I ask you a question, and you just don't answer, and then you go sophistry.
because I only speak
Ad hominem.
I only speak on. I haven't done that.
My God, what is he talking? He just accused Luke Beasley of doing an ad hom. When did Luke do that? What is he even talking about, you guys? He's going into full debate bro brain, and he's just throwing words out now.
Hominem.
all you're doing is saying, you do this, you do that, you do this. You're not actually giving me substance.
Oh no. I was saying I was just shocked that you didn't listen to my substance earlier. But yeah. So the January 6th, while I'm only going to speak on things I'm very informed on, so I'm not going to tell you exactly to the month that they should get. I do respect the fact that they were prosecuted in a court of law, and I don't think Trump to send a message to his base that what happened on January 6th was good, which is why he would do such a pardon. Should be pardoning folks who were violent, or
I think 3 years is long enough.
yeah, and that's a wrong stance, but okay.
How is it wrong?
I just explained it to you.
No. You didn't. You said the court process should play out the way it is. My opinion on the amount of time should be served for a crime is not just wrong because you like courts.
No, I get
You
that.
need to explain
I'm saying
why the time frame I'm asserting should be longer than 3 years.
No, I'm.
We're just in a matter of opinion here. It's just subjective opinion. Like I don't know what. How can you give me? There's not like a scientific answer for this, right?
saying the default. You have to have overwhelming, compelling.
Let's just look it up. Like, what's the average time to be sentenced for? What are the federal sentencing guidelines for assaulting a police officer? But again, the crime of them assaulting a police officer is one crime in service of a much larger crime. Like assaulting a police officer is bad, but I would argue trying to stop the certification of an election through violence is actually a much worse crime than assaulting a police officer. Assaulting a police officer can result in a sentence of at least 2 years in prison, and the maximum sentence is 15 years, regardless of prior convictions.
Evidence that someone has been wronged to justify a president stepping in and saying, I'm subverting the justice system outcome. Do you agree with that premise?
No.
That's a moral.
So you're making a fascist argument.
A fascist argument?
You are making the fascist argument that the hierarchical structure of government is just and should be upheld regardless.
Why?
What? What does he think fascism is? What are we talking about?
Okay, I'm not going to ask that. This is
Right, and so the system we have is...
I'm just not loving, and this is a way of celebrating violence, that Trump is celebrating those as far as a pardon, and in his rhetoric and in his national anthem thingy, people who attacked the Capitol. Why did they attack it? Because they believed lies about the election.
There's a variety of reasons why people were violent on January 6th. Largely that they believe the
You could
election
just
was
be like,
stolen.
hey, that's bad. You don't have to keep going.
I've called for their arrest and prosecution. Like this is not a shock to my audience.
My reporting
We
is
disagree.
responsible for the arrest of a couple of January.
Tim Pool has also, like, in the beginning, he was, from my recollection, Tim Pool in the beginning was like, he January 6th was bad. There was no fraud, blah, 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 blah. And then after like a couple years, he was fully, like, I feel like Tim Pool has fully committed to 2020 was stolen. I could be wrong. Pretty sure he changed his tune and took the position that 2020 was rigged.
My point is that if you've got somebody on a misdemeanor charge who's been held without trial,
Misdemeanor.
a pardon makes perfect sense. unless you're a fascist. And the system is just.
A misdemeanor?
So it's like,
Wait,
Benjamin
where did he get misdemeanor? What's he talking about there?
Franklin, who said it is better that 100 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. You've taken the Otto von Bismarck approach of it is better that 10 innocent people suffer than one guilty person escape.
I don't know how Luke took that position. What are you talking about?
So, no.
How did he take that position?
You don't know anything about these January 6 cases. You don't know why these people are in jail. You don't know that a man is in Brooklyn right now for 3 years without charge or trial. And when Donald Trump says these people have been held for too long, you say, no, Trump is wrong. Keep them locked up. That's fucking fascist. Dude, you have sit here.
Look at his face, bro. Oh my goodness. Hold on. January 6th defendant, no charges? Is that what they're alleging? Talking about this guy? Exactly 3 years later, January 6th defendant Edward Jacob Lang is still awaiting trial over a dozen charges related to his involvement in the assault on the Capitol building in 2021. After multiple pushbacks, his trial date is set for September 9th. This date would set his time awaiting trial at 3 years and 9 months. Lang, 26, is a longtime resident of Narrowsburg and Honesdale High School graduate, was arrested in Newburgh, where he was currently living just 10 days after the raid. His trial date was moved twice last year. At first, it was switched to May, then later shifted to October. However, his trial was put on hold once more due to pending Supreme Court appeal that eyed the possibility of the elimination of one of his 13 federal charges. One of those charges is that of obstruction of an official proceeding. However, this charge faces a possibility of being dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court, as their decision anticipated by June could affect Lang, as well as 300 other January 6er defendants and former President Donald Trump. In addition to the obstruction charge, he's been accused of fighting with police for about 2 hours with his fists, feet, a baseball bat, and shield. Social media saw his presence on the day with multiple instances of Lang posting photos of himself along with words such as "give me liberty or give me death." And I'm supposed to cry that this guy was in jail for 3 years waiting for trial? Really?
You've been sitting here with no knowledge of the specifics of some of these cases. There is a man in Brooklyn right now, I'm going to say it again, no charges whatsoever brought, and he's been in jail for 3 years.
There are I don't know who he's talking about. Give me a name. Who's been incarcerated without any charges? Am I going to get a source for this? If he's talking about Lang, this man was definitely charged with stuff.
For you to sit there and say it is good that he remains locked up is fascism. That is saying the hierarchical system of the courts and the government is just, and the process is all that matters. And I am
That's not what fascism means, but whatever.
saying perhaps 3 years is enough, because I actually have moral logic and an understanding of these cases. Hence, my position on January 6th has always been the people who have attacked police must go to prison. But 3 years is a long time for assault on an officer. We have seen people on the far left.
Is it though? Because we just looked at the sentencing guidelines and it's anywhere between 2 and 15 years. And it's not just about assaulting police though. The case that we just looked at now was an obstruction of an official proceeding, but there were also charges of like violent crimes.
Notably, when they were firebombing all across Minnesota, 33 people murdered. And how many criminal charges did we get for this? When they firebombed a police station and forced the police to evacuate. On May 29th, 2020, when thousands of far leftists
10,000 people were arrested during the summer protests of 2020, but okay, go off.
Firebombed the White House grounds and set fire to St. John's Church and injured 100 police officers. How many people went to prison for 3 years? How many of them who never showed up on that day are in prison for 20 years? Enrique Tarrio wasn't.
The charges that January 6 rioters faced were more serious than the ones in 2020. Like there's a huge difference between like breaking into a store or torching a building or whatever as a part of a riot, and then like trying to stop the certification of an election. They're both bad, but one of them is significantly worse. Significantly worse. One is an act of like rage and violence, misdirected, and the other is an intention to subvert the will of the voters and just like literally end American democracy. One is far worse than the other.
Isn't even in D.C. on January 6th, and you are saying that man who his only crime was, quote, don't leave. That's his only crime. You think he should be in prison?
Enrique Tarrio, his only crime was, quote, don't leave. I'm pretty sure he was convicted of seditious conspiracy. Along with three other Proud Boys leaders, Tarrio was convicted in May 2023 of seditious conspiracy for his role in the 2021 United States Capitol attack. In September 2023, Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Get nerd. On December 12, 2020, after Donald Trump was defeated in November 2020 election, Tarrio and the Proud Boys, along with other far-right groups, marched in Washington, D.C. to support Trump's campaign to delegitimize his election loss. Tarrio and the group set fire to a Black Lives Matter banner they seized from Asbury United Methodist Church, a historic black church. The trial lasted more than 3 months and featured dozens of witnesses. Evidence introduced at trial against Tarrio and his co-defendants include videos, thousands of messages on encrypted group chats among Proud Boys leadership, as well as public messages on Parler from both before and on January 6. Tarrio had convened a, quote, ministry of self-defense, end quote, to coordinate Proud Boys leadership on January 6. The chat showed Tarrio, stationed in a Baltimore hotel room, encouraged Proud Boys as they attacked the Capitol. Having been barred from D.C. by a judge, Tarrio was not in D.C. during the attack. On January 6, Tarrio told his followers on social media, "Do what must be done." Later, in an encrypted group chat, he directed other Proud Boys to, quote, "do it again." In another message, Tarrio wrote, quote, "Make no mistakes, we did this," end quote. Prosecutors also introduced evidence that Tarrio had discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings, a scheme that the Proud Boys dubbed, quote, 1776 returns, in which, quote, the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. But according to Tim Pool, all Tarrio said was don't leave.
For 12 wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. And you are saying that man who his only crime was, quote, don't leave. That's his only crime.
That's his only crime, guys. All he said was don't leave. That's all he said. He wasn't even there. He wasn't even in D.C. Are you going to sentence him?
You think he should be in prison for 20 years because you're a fascist. You don't care what the facts are. You don't care if this is unjust. You only care that the machine state has decreed you are not to be locked up. And this is the problem I have with the left. They don't know the facts. They don't care about the facts. They view morality as a blanket government stroke of the pen. And every person, regardless of their crime, should be in prison for decades. I reject it outright. The people who fought cops should go to prison. They did. It's been 3 years. But when you've got people who are on misdemeanor charges for having walked into a building at 4 p.m. after the riot, and I know some of these people, they walked into a building for 2 minutes and walked out, and they got 18 months for that. I don't see you.
They got off easy. They got off easy. I'm sorry, Tim. Did they follow the people who violently breached the Capitol? Did they follow a group of people that violently breached the Capitol? That broke in violently, that clashed with police, that saw people clashing with police for hours and then followed them into a building? And you think these people, what, deserve leniency? They got off easy. If somebody only served 18 months for going into the Capitol that day, that is a light sentence, bro.
You defending the innocent people who walked onto a public grass at a public building after a riot had been completed. You don't know. You don't care.
A public building? Was it open to the public that day, Tim? Why would you call it a public building? Was it open that day, Tim?
You've taken a tribal position and people are suffering because of it. Now you say that Donald Trump saying the injustice that we've seen warrants commutation or pardons. You say that means he's advocating for violence. This is the ultimate problem. Then you cite a press release from Maryland saying, but the right's more violent. There is a distinction between a white supremacist as a right-wing group and a run-of-the-mill Christian conservative who showed
There are, but they're both right-wing.
Up on that day, not to protest. Let's talk about Brandon Strzok. He never went in the building. He was on the other side of the building. There was a permitted protest. He walked up the stairs and he was yelling. They put this guy in prison. There is
good. How do you spell that name? Brian Strzok. Let's look into this. He wasn't entirely accurate with respect to his summary about what Enrique Tarrio did that day. Let's look into this new guy, Brandon Strzok. How do you say it? Brandon. I'm pretty sure this shot on the left is the guy. So he's standing there like 5 feet behind people that he sees are very clearly violently clashing with cops. And I'm supposed to feel bad for this person?
There was Owen Schroyer, who was at a permitted rally, who was yelling death to communists. They put him in prison and specifically cited his speech. My dude.
Owen Schroyer. In June 2023, Schroyer pleaded guilty to illegally entering a restricted area near the United States Capitol building during the January 6th attack. He was arrested and charged in August 2021. On September 12th, 2023, he was sentenced to 60 days in jail. He got 60 days. It sounds like he got off light too.
You don't know what you're talking about. And it's fine. I get it. We try to be polite. We try to be nice. But there are so many.
He says tries to be polite and nice, and he's just been nothing but condescending and smug to a degree that I've rarely seen from him to Luke Beasley this whole time.
Many young liberals.
And to Luke's credit, Luke is like keeping his composure. Like the best thing you can do when somebody is losing their shit like this is just keep your shit together and just let them lose their shit.
Who sit here and say, the corporate press told me that these people are bad and the machine state government has decreed it by pen. So I don't care what crime they committed. I don't care what the jury said. I don't care who was on the jury. Enrique Tarrio, who was not there, should be in prison for 2 decades. Tell me this now. Why is Enrique Tarrio in prison?
Yeah, so they uncovered with him his plot to overthrow the government.
Enrique Tarrio, is it?
Yeah, and his organization.
What plot? Who's they? Give me some
prosecutors.
Give me some data. Stop.
Oh my God. This performative my God.
Stop squinting at me and saying the prosecutors did a thing. You didn't know. You didn't read it. You didn't read the court papers. All you know is the fascist machine state told you he should be in prison, and you're saying yes to them. Tell me why. Give me the data.
I understand that laws on the books have been there for a long time that I agree with, that if it's proven that you had a plan and you wanted to act on it, and then days after.
What's the proof?
The proof is
say the proof.
Text messages, encrypted messages, video evidence, witness testimony, and public parlor posts was what we just read in Wikipedia.
Say it.
Communications between.
What communications? What did he say? What did he do?
Is this serious?
Are you going to tell me why you think Enrique Tarrio should be in prison for 20 years, or are you going to say the government decreed it?
I just explained to you.
So the government said so. Is that it?
It's usually law enforcement, which I guess is part of the government.
Government said so?
Yep. Law enforcement that uncovers evidence of communications, a memo that he crafted and sent to his organization.
Saying what?
That detailed each institution of government that they were going to try to overthrow. Then just days later, his organization is at the Capitol.
I don't think we can even pull up Enrique Tarrio.
I'm not quite sure that there's any evidence of
These people are so stupid. Man. God. Imagine being a multimillionaire and you're this stupid.
that sort.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this. The idea that
You're about to see the evidence. Don't look at it. It's going to undermine everything you're about to say. Watch. He's going to nuke the Wikipedia. No, take it down. Let's.
Enrique Tarrio crafted a memo outlining.
Okay.
Or they. 3 months featured witness. Evidence
Tim.
featured Tarrio and co-defense.
Tim. Be careful. You just screamed at him. You're going to look so stupid if there's actual evidence here, right?
Included videos, thousands of messages in encrypted chat groups, as well as a public message on Parler. On or before January 6th, Tarrio convened a Ministry of Self-Defense to coordinate Proud Boys leadership on January 6th. The chat showed that Tarrio, stationed in Baltimore, encouraged the Proud Boys as they attacked the Capitol. Let's figure out what that encouragement was.
Oh, no.
Are they going to actually say in the article? So here's a citation. Proud Boy and 3 other members of the far groups.
They would have said if you would have kept reading the Wikipedia article, they were going to get into specifics, but you just stopped reading it. But okay.
Convicted Thursday in a plot to attack the Capitol. A jury in Washington, D.C. found Tarrio and 3 lieutenants guilty of seditious conspiracy after hearing dozens of witnesses. Jurors cleared a 5th defendant, Dominic Pizzola, on a citizen charge and a significant milestone of the Justice Department, which is now secured a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting. Wikipedia asserts that they did this, but there's actually nothing in the news article that actually...
Wait, hold on. Wait. I think he scrolled past it.
Justice Department, which is now secured a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah.
The verdict comes after a trial that took more than twice as long as originally inspected, slowed by bickering, mistrial motions, and revelations of government informants. Securing the conviction of Tarrio, a high-profile leader who wasn't at the riot himself, could embolden Justice Department, blah, 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 blah.
They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting. Wikipedia.
So the Wikipedia article does give like specific, but he just like, it might even be on this page here. Yeah, they do. Right here on the Wikipedia page. On January 6th, Tarrio told his followers on social media, do what must be done. Later, in an encrypted group chat, he directed other Proud Boys to do it again. In another message, Tario wrote, "Make no mistake, we did this." Prosecutors also introduced evidence that Tario had discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington and storm government buildings. A scheme that the Proud Boys dubbed 1776 returns.
Defense to coordinate Proud Boys
He just
leadership on
skipped it,
January
though.
6th. The citizen on a citizen charge and a significant milestone of the Justice Department, which is now secured.
It was right there. It was right there on the screen, and he just skipped it.
Conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting. Wikipedia asserts that they did this, but there's actually nothing in the news article that actually states that is true. Well, now we got a problem. Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source.
It's right there on the screen. Read, it's the middle paragraph. It's right there. It's right there.
See, there it is.
There
They
you go.
introduced evidence that Tario discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings in a scheme they
no.
called 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent
Uh-oh, Tim, you were just screaming at Luke. Are you going to apologize for screaming at him?
code for the U.S. Capitol. In a message, he said, "Make no mistake, we did this. Do what must be done," and he directed the Proud Boys to do it again. So the question then becomes, in the bigger picture,
So are you going to at all acknowledge?
Oh, man. This is amazing content, you guys.
That you just blew up over something that I was absolutely citing fairly?
I don't think you cited it fairly.
No, Tim! Tim! You're a grown-up. Take responsibility for your actions.
I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow a government. That's kind of
That's a very loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
It's not. It's not. It's absolutely not. It got into specifics. Not broad. It's not loose. They said specifically what he did.
Y'all don't seem to be that informed.
Wait,
on
look,
the
respectfully,
plan
I cover a
yourself.
lot of protests and riots. A lot of people try to protest and riot and occupy government buildings. Do you think that qualifies as trying to, overthrow your government?
No.
That is not the same thing that Enrico Tario was prosecuted for. He went well beyond that.
Okay, good. So, I mean,
But if they had a plan to take control of the government, which was this one,
If this was an
Is
actual
that
plan, this
a
was
plan?
the leastly
That's a
poorly
plan to take
most
over the government?
ridiculous.
Well, now we're getting into a separate argument. I agree. It was a stupid plan. That's why he's in prison. You.
plan ever. They went after people for having Lego sets of the Capitol. I mean, the level of political prosecution. Would you even admit that there was some level of politics when it came to the prosecution of the J6ers? Would you say politics played a role in this?
engaging with this as thoughtfully as possible, not trying to grandstand. Of course, often for very justifiable reasons, prosecutors will try to make an example of someone who, for example, tried to overthrow the government to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. I see why such a thing,
Personally, I reject the idea that
categorized
that is
as
trying to
sedition,
overthrow the government.
would be uniquely bad to prosecutors. And political in that this all involved politics, right? And thus,
I'm sorry, I have to
message
say
has to be
this.
sent.
The Wikipedia article making those claims is not citing any actual proof that they said those things.
Oh my God, man. This is so embarrassing. What an embarrassing performance from Tim Pool here. Sources are right here. These numbers in blue right here, these are sources. That's a source. 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 I'm seeing like 10 sources in the paragraph dedicated to Enrico Tario's court case. Okay.
Because we're harping on these pardons. Pardons are obviously an interesting political, constitutional quirk that presidents are able to do that. It really does undermine the law in our country. But Biden's getting a lot of pushback for clemency that he granted for the Cash for Kids judge who was responsible for sending something like 2,000 children into a Pennsylvania jail, a private prison that he was getting kickbacks for. Do you think that was worse than any pardon Donald Trump could give to any January 6th rioter?
what?
Have you heard of this? this judge that Joe Biden granted clemency for, a judge who was responsible for sending thousands of teenagers.
I don't like that pardon. I think that pardon was bad, or that commutation rather. I think he didn't. I don't know if he pardoned him. I think he commuted the rest of his sentence. But no, I don't think that would be worse than pardoning like a January 6th rioter. No. I'll just answer the question. No, it's not worse.
Teenagers to prison for, otherwise misdemeanor charges while he was getting kickbacks for. Joe Biden was getting a lot of pushback for this because
I've been agreeing with a lot.
So have you heard?
I'm not going to make
this guy specifically.
I've heard of that, but I'm not as read in on it as I should be to speak on it. But
I wonder if
I was more focused on just because it was the big story, and I wanted to again advocate principle his Hunter Biden pardon, which has been the topic of discussion pardon-wise for us mostly.
Yeah, it was funny because you were telling us a little bit pre-show that you actually had a first-hand experience with Hunter Biden. I don't know. Can you tell us anything about your experience firsthand with?
Yeah, just at the holiday
the
party.
myth, the legend. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew somebody at the White House who invited me to the White House party, the holiday party. Hunter Biden was there. I found it kind of strange.
I feel like
what was it? I'm sorry. What was his reception?
Right, dude. Who cares? There's that saying that if you're not,
dude, Tim is a asshole. Tim is just a prick. You guys. He told his own host, "Who gives a." Did you see this? Listen.
The holiday party. Hunter Biden was there. I found it kind of strange.
I feel like
what was it? I'm sorry. What was his reception?
Right, dude. Who cares? There's that saying that if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not conservative when you're old, you have no head. But the interesting thing about it is like what we define as conservative or liberal are amorphous, right?
They're not.
So like, what does it mean to be conservative?
Well, it means, typically when we're talking about conservatives, we're talking about people that are trying to conserve something, conserve some part of culture. They're more into traditions. They're not into upending societal, cultural, religious norms. When we're talking about conservative in a political sense, we're talking about someone who generally advocates for government to have less control of people's lives. So when we're talking about economics, we're talking about someone who thinks that the government should do less regulating of free market economies and let the market sort of do its thing, right? Like, it's not amorphous at all. Like, we can very obviously define conservative, assuming we're not regarded. You know what I mean? I don't know what game he's playing here. He's like, who knows what people mean when they say conservative? It's like, well, you're not a idiot. You know what people are talking about when they say that.
Who wants to try and explain what conservative is?
Traditional, hierarchical, individualistic are the general ideals that it trends towards.
What does liberal mean?
Like Enlightenment ideas, vaguely.
I love how this guy's like immediately answers the question. Tim's like, who knows what we even mean when we say these words? And then his co-hosts are like, oh, it means this and this and this. And that means that it's just
free speech. God.
And then why is it that the colloquial liberal are the authoritarians in this country?
Because they're not liberals. Because Rush Limbaugh in the 90s ruined the word liberal.
So like,
I obviously disagree with that, but
so lockdowns. Let's try lockdowns. We'll start there. Government lockdowns were largely a liberal phenomenon.
Well, initially it was right and left.
Initially, it was Trump
supported too
for 2 weeks, and then
it was more than 2 weeks.
No. The initial thing was 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Oh yeah,
and that was Trump who did that, and then it resulted in basically everybody locking down. But it was the right that ultimately started letting up, and so you ended up with vaccine mandates, mask mandates, which shifted largely into a liberal.
Yeah,
that's why I say left instead.
Agreed.
So that became the authoritarian faction. The left adopted that one.
But then, like, what do you say about Trump talking about going after the media outlets he doesn't like or
suing them? That's allowed.
Whenever he said, oh no, I know it's allowed. You agree though that like him saying the government, this was a quote on True Social you pulled up, should come down hard on MSNBC.
What's wrong with that?
That's fine to you? That's not authoritarian.
That's authoritarian, Tim. That's authoritarian, Tim.
To me, whenever presidents want to wield a governmental power to go after outlets they don't like their coverage of,
but we have laws, though.
What do you think about Stephanopoulos defaming Donald Trump?
Let's not segue off of the question he just asked.
He didn't defame him.
So
Tim hates his co-hosts. He just hates him, bro.
So when
we'll love to talk about that, by the way.
When Trump says there are we have civil liability issues pertaining to defamation and the media, yeah, you sue him, and
Hey, Hutch, what do you call a single Portuguese person? Think about it. Think about it. A Portugoose. Hey, 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 hey. Weezer out.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
If the government is an aggrieved party through defamation, then they should sue them.
Yeah, I know y'all
MSN
would be losing your absolute minds if Biden was out saying the media, like Fox News,
I wouldn't be.
criminals.
I assure you a lot of Trump supporters would be.
Fox News.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I
saying
wouldn't be.
That's an authoritarian
Yes, you would,
impulse
Tim.
to want to punish not outlets that I don't even know what the justification would be, but it's all about people who have wronged him. And if you disagree with
Well,
that, I think you're obviously staring in the face
I'm not
of facts and
saying
going,
that aggrieved parties should have no recourse, be it the government or otherwise. So if the federal government is lied about by the New York Times,
Do you think Ann Seltzer deserves to be drained of her funds by Donald Trump?
I never said I agree with that.
Right. So he's doing it.
Would you call that authoritarian? For a president-elect to sue a pollster because he didn't like a poll that she released a couple weeks before the election.
He's allowed to file a
It's a bit authoritarian, Tim.
civil lawsuit.
He's allowed legally. I'm saying
Right.
it can
It's a
be,
personal
you can
lawsuit.
act in an authoritarian manner.
Okay, well, this is very different from
Dude,
like
no, no,
taking
no.
people's jobs away unless they get a medication.
Well, yeah, those were the individual jobs. The jobs were doing that.
Under government mandate, Biden issued a mandate that a company
He's
with
never
more than,
said- yeah, his
companies with more than 100 employees had to do it.
Or
Tried to use
masking.
or
OSHA
else.
to make it happen.
Or masking. It was always an option. You were never forced.
Well,
They tried to use OSHA to make it.
yeah, they required that
For
if you had more than
federal
100
workers-
employees, you were forced to issue vaccine mandates.
Or masks.
Sure, pick one.
Yeah.
The government forced every company to do this.
Yeah.
Don't you get that there's a huge difference between he's saying that Biden was trying to force people to get the vaccine and Luke is saying or wear a mask, which obviously runs right up against Tim's narrative here.
The government has all sorts of mandates for safety. And
OSHA has no authority to do anything like that, and the Supreme Court found it. Agreed.
Listen.
You know,
I'm totally
you could
fine if this
disagree
is your
with it.
argument. That's fine.
I'm just saying that-
if you think that filing a defamation lawsuit is comparable to the government mandating
No.
everybody
I'm saying
engage in a
there's
medical
nothing
practice,
more
fine.
authoritarian than saying we should terminate the Constitution because
When did he say that?
election life.
It's so this is so frustrating. Like Tim, you know he said that. Stop playing games. You know exactly what he said, Tim.
Eyes pulled up on True Social. The MSNBC comment. He talked about.
We went over this one with
flying
Shank on the
through-
terminate the Constitution, and I'll give.
Yeah, don't defend that. It's just It's just ugh. It's just like you don't. The
That's not an
Constitution
argument.
shouldn't be
He
terminated.
didn't say that.
Pull it up, please. A massive fraud of this type of magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations.
We went over this with Jack, and I know that you guys have a tribal reason why you're going to oppose. You're not.
No.
gonna
I think
engage.
there's just few things that are so.
It's not tribal. It's alarming to me when the leader of a political party says that he should be able to terminate the Constitution because he says there's fraud. Not because he established there was fraud in a court with evidence, that would be different, but because he simply says there's fraud, he should be allowed to terminate the Constitution. That is wildly authoritarian, beyond anything that Biden did with any vaccine mandates.
Succinctly an embodiment of someone's lack of dedication to our Constitution. So
Let me ask you a question.
Him thinking Ann Seltzer.
Let me ask you a question. If I said the overturning of Roe v. Wade allows for women to be put in bonnets and red dresses and forced to be impregnated, am I calling for them to be?
Oh my God. It's so obvious like what Trump was saying. He was saying he should be allowed to terminate the Constitution. And this is, after literal years of him. He tweeted that in like 2022, like 2 years after the election. Trump made no attempt to hide his preference for or his position that he should be able to terminate the Constitution. That was he was not ambiguous about any of this.
Yeah, you're alluding to that being, yeah.
So when the Democrats literally said that, you were saying,
that's the argument?
So you agree that the Democrats want to put women in bonnets?
No, I understand that you can both make an argument that we live in some dystopian reality where this is the case.
So here's my point.
But Trump earlier in the message was talking about overturning the election. He was saying he would be the one by the mechanism of terminating the Constitution.
So this
overturn the election result.
I call this the Covington effect. When was that the Covington kids or the Sandman effect? Trump said, do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did
What do you think he was trying to say with this, Tim?
not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. I'll give you, we talked with Cenk about this a couple weeks ago.
Please tell me, please.
Yeah.
Are you saying he wasn't obviously saying that we've gone so far because of his lies? You agreed those were lies
What lies?
about the election.
Which ones?
How millions of votes and Dominion was flipping and all these things.
Did Trump explicitly say Dominion flipped votes?
Yes.
Yes.
Then that's not true. Yeah, that was wrong.
Okay.
Well, there's a difference between being wrong and lying. And I'm not here to assert that I can read anyone's mind.
Okay, but there were times that the people around him heard him say, like, "Can you believe I lost to this guy?"
Who said that? I mean, come on, like, dude, you're making a lot of statements of fact, and I'm asking you just be like, hey, like, who claimed?
Okay,
Trump
fine.
said,
He accidentally made a bunch of false statements, and it led to
No, he lies.
terrible
I
things.
think Trump lies a lot.
And even if you thought the election
Then
was
what
unfair,
the f- are you arguing about?
trying to do the fake elector scheme, all those things, none of it's justifiable. That
This is
so
Scott,
authoritarian.
Scott Adams
it's
calls
so
this
authoritarian.
right. Scott Adams calls this what is it? One screen, two movies effect.
That's Yeah, you're shocking. That's crazy.
I mean,
I don't think we're allowed to. I mean,
Wait, it's a 5v1? Who the f is this guy? Has he just been waiting in the wings the whole time?
with the masking, that wasn't an option, though, wasn't it? Just like you had to get the vaccine.
couldn't even-
I don't remember.
You couldn't even go get food. But in this regard, this is a really, really great example of the one screen, two movies. Now, I have no problem saying I
did
understand
that
why
guy
you
come
believe
from?
what you believe. Right. I also think that this country is deeply pitted against it's two factions that are deeply pitted against each other that can't actually understand the phenomenon at play. That is, nowhere in that statement did Trump say we must terminate the Constitution. You interpret it as such.
So what do you think he's trying to say, Tim? What's the point of this?
That's it.
This is the appropriate response. Okay, Tim, what's he saying? What do you think he's saying then?
Yeah, does
Does it say we must terminate the Constitution?
Bending over backwards way.
Does it
Well,
say
actually,
that?
the reason
does
that
it say
I
it?
Just a different interpretation.
It's
not
not.
crazy.
It's not.
It's
You
not
don't say the
crazy bending
election-
over backwards. You're putting the
you don't
context
say
on it.
false statements about the election and then say we should do something that's not constitutional, which is throw an election out months and months after it happened,
Years.
and then go, by the
Years.
It was a
allows
question.
for
It was phrased as a
No,
question.
hold on. This is actually really simple. In the context you are presenting, Trump is saying, I believe there was a massive fraud against me. The founding fathers would not have wanted this. This fraud they have committed allows for all of the rules to be thrown out. He is not saying we must terminate the Constitution. He's saying Democrats already did.
All right, that you can
You
make that
agree
argument.
that it's not an argument I made up. This is literally what
that being
conservatives believe.
you're saying that's your interpretation. I'm saying
It's not my interpretation.
well, then what's your interpretation?
I am telling you there.
What is your interpretation then? Take a stance on it.
Trump issued a statement that all rules and regulations, including those in the Constitution, can be overturned in the event that there is a massive fraud.
Okay, thank you. Well, we agree then. That's crazy and authoritarian. Because he was lying about the fraud, and he's lying about the mechanisms by which you address fraud.
You just reasserted that you can read his mind when Tim was saying no.
Oh, yeah.
read his
If
mind.
one guy thinks an election was unfair and can't present that in the places where you have to present it to get an election
courts.
overturned, courts, then yes, I
think
lie, false statement, whatever, it's ridiculous and it's dangerous is the important point. So I think if we want to go through instances where we feel like either side
So the OSHA mandate was that you had to get vaccinated or it wasn't masking. It was you had to either get vaccinated or you had to test negative for the coronavirus at least once a week. They said that workers must get paid time off to get vaccinated, that employers don't need to pay for testing. Actually, no. And they said unvaccinated people must wear masks. So yeah, that's what he was saying. Yeah.
it has done authoritarian things, we could do that. But it's wild that y'all are so willing to speak out about what you perceive to be authoritarianism on the left with no understanding of the chief authoritarian crime you could do is trying to prevent the key part of our democratic process, which is the peaceful transfer of power.
So
the chief authoritarian crime you could do is kill someone without due process, but we won't get into that one tonight.
that was Obama.
Credit to Luke, man, for keeping his head on a swivel because I think he's handled himself quite well this entire conversation.
That's right.
Yeah. The point here is when we're trying to logically understand what is going on, because clearly it's not so easy to say Trump is evil, Trump is good. There's two different factions in this country. Trump won the popular mandate. Therefore, you could argue, I guess the public thinks Trump is good. In that case, the public interpretation of this in the majority is that Trump wasn't calling for the termination of the Constitution.
What is this logic? How do you arrive at that conclusion? You don't need to take that leap. You could just say that people know that, a lot of people know that maybe he doesn't have the best character. Maybe they didn't approve of everything he did on January 6th. Maybe they even thought it was like really, really bad, but they just prioritized the economy over everything else. Like, you don't need to, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who voted for Donald Trump are saying with that vote, we don't think that he said we should terminate the Constitution. I don't know how you get to that. I don't understand what that train of logic looks like. How do you go from point A to point B there?
His faction won the
Almost every
vote.
person I've talked to
You're a liberal.
doesn't know that.
Doesn't know what? What he said?
Yeah. No, people don't know
right.
that he's threatened media outlets like he has. He's talked about
Threaten him with what? Come on.
calling them criminals would be bad.
Why?
Because fostering an environment where people who, for the singular reason that they speak out against you politically, which they're allowed to do, are criminals. That's the only thing he would cite, is that they've said terrible things about him.
Or like Liz Cheney. How is Liz Cheney a criminal? Or Fauci, joking about imprisoning Fauci. How is Fauci a criminal? Or Milley. How is saying that Milley should be executed? For what? What crime?
And then going further to say the government should get involved in punishing them. And then to show his willingness to, even before he takes office, with him as a much more resourced person, trying to punish ABC, which we could talk about that was ridiculous that they decided to bend the knee there, and then Ann Seltzer for doing a poll that was wrong.
But that's a private lawsuit.
Yeah, and he's doing that for a purpose.
So?
Which I don't like.
I sued Kamala Harris.
Awesome. I'm saying I don't like whenever presidents wield their official governmental power or
But it's private.
power,
It's not government power.
Or their power of their massive megaphone, understanding he's about to have governmental power, to threaten people who speak out against him.
There was no guarantee that he was going to have governmental power.
No, he's doing this suit now.
This guy is so stupid. He's not following the conversation. This guy's
Doing the ABC or the ABC.
When it was going on,
the
but it was
Ann
going on
Seltzer.
prior to him winning, though.
No, Ann Seltzer, he just brought this suit.
He did. I think it's a stupid lawsuit, but it's a private lawsuit, so I don't care.
What you think? Yeah,
I
think
don't-
it's stupid. So I'm not gonna ask you. I was about to ask you.
Like why? Like I don't know. Like Trump could sue whoever he wants. I don't know.
He said that the government should rip CBS.
brilliant logic there, Tim. Brilliant logic. Well, he can sue people, Like Luke is making the point, the very accurate point, that Trump is in a unique position. He's about to assume the mantle of the most powerful person on earth, most politically powerful person on earth. And he is in part using that mantle to direct animosity and distrust towards a person who gave him a bad poll. Like, Tim doesn't seem to understand the concept that Trump can do something in the capacity of a private citizen, and that thing can have its significance bolstered by virtue of the fact that he's going to be the president. It's different when the president sues you. When the president-elect sues you, the ramifications of that are going to be orders of magnitude, like 100x the kind of consequences that you might experience if, like, some guy in Iowa sued Ann Seltzer. Do you understand what I'm saying, chap? If it was just some guy with no platform suing Ann Seltzer in Iowa, who gives a right? Like, who gives a like? What kind of resources does this guy have? What kind of megaphone do they have? Can they sway public opinion based on a single tweet in the way that Donald Trump can? Obviously not. So it's a private action, but Donald Trump is very clearly wielding the influence that he now gets to exert via the fact that he's going to be the president. I know you guys get it because it's just a simple concept. This isn't like a fifth grader could understand this, but Tim is over here playing stupid. Like, he can't understand the point that Luke is making here. It's painful to watch.
The air, ABC off
You know
the
why?
air.
Do you know why he
Because
says
he was lying about what happened in a Kamala
Because
Harris
CBS edited the
interview.
interview.
They edit every interview.
No,
to make it more succinct. They edited
Hold
his
on.
interview too.
They edited two different versions, and when they got a bad reaction, they changed her answer.
That's not what they did. It's not what they did. They showed one clip in a preview for the 60 Minutes interview, and then they showed another clip of the same answer that she gave in the actual interview itself. And Luke is absolutely right. 60 Minutes regularly will edit answers to questions down to make them succinct. So if they want to cover 6 or 7 or 8 topics and they got 30 minutes to do it or whatever, then they're not going to give you the full length answer for every question that they give. They'll choose to edit some things down and some things a little bit more, some things a little bit less. This is just very standard kind of stuff. I know it's called 60 Minutes, but they don't literally, it's not literally 60 minutes, right? So like, again, this is just a standard practice for 60 minutes. The idea that they, like what Trump was saying that 60 Minutes did was Trump was saying that they took an answer that she gave for a totally different question and then used it for the Israel question to make her look better. And this is such a nonsensical thing to, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like when you watch both the preview of what 60 Minutes did, and then you watch the answer that was given in the actual segment that aired, it's obvious what question she's answering.
That's very different.
No, they played one.
That actually
one was an extended version, and the other was for morning, like the CBS mornings.
She gave a different answer.
No. I watched the full unedited thing. She gives a kind of, and then
either way, the argument is not that Trump.
Well, don't say something false. Then either way,
no.
It's not true.
I'm saying that is true.
No,
they issued 2 different versions.
No, she gave a longer answer, and the first like half of it was a little bit more. There was a lack of succinct.
So there's 2 different versions. Are there 2 different versions?
It's not 2 different. It's one answer, Tim. It's one answer. And there's 2 different cuts of that one answer, but it's one answer, right? So like over here, this is what they cut out for the actual segment, and that's what they used. And over here, this is what they used for the trailer. If they were trying to hide how stupid she looked, why the would they use this clip in the trailer? If they were trying to hide it, why wouldn't they get rid of that clip and not air it? It doesn't make any sense. It's such a stupid thing to accuse them of doing. It's utterly nonsensical.
No, it's one answer that then they only took one part of, like
Are
they
there
did with Trump
2
too.
videos that are different from each other of the answer?
They ran like
So it's
a
yes.
version, like because they can't play the entire interview on CBS Mornings when they're
Whatever the point
advertising
is.
for it.
We're trying to get to the
Wait.
root of the
Okay,
logic.
so whenever
Got him, Luke.
Keep it specific.
when I play a Tim Pool clip and I
keep
go,
it
hey,
specific.
I was on Tim Pool, here's 10 seconds of it, the full thing's on Tim Pool's channel. Like they
Be
did.
specific. We're talking about
CBS
Kamala
Mornings.
Harris.
Please.
He's constructing a hypothetical to help you understand something, Tim, that you're so clearly not understanding. Okay? That's the point of the hypothetical, Tim.
Don't talk about
Please
me.
try.
Go back to Kamala Harris.
I'm trying to illustrate a point.
You're meandering.
That they on CBS Mornings aren't going to play the full interview. So they played a more succinct
I'm not
portion.
arguing that. I'm trying to
I don't
ask
think
you.
Trump pulling off CBS off the air because they did what they have a right to do, which is
he pull him off the air?
editing interviews. He's not president yet.
And you think that as president, he can pull them off the air?
I think him saying it is proof of his authoritarian intentions, whether or not he's competent enough to get it done.
So if a news outlet does selectively edit for political reasons,
I'm out. I'm pulling the plug. No more. I can't do it. I'm done. This is it.